being part of a coalition that really is fighting for the industry. And we are dealing with some very significant threats to the industry.
Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation, Brian. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's I've always been a huge follower of the CRN, being in the industry for so long. I mean, CRN is part of that dialogue since the very beginning. I've attended several of your events in the past. Obviously, had the pleasure of seeing you this October and speaking for your audience. So
Well, you were fantastic. We thank you for coming to Convergence 24. The Welcomes event certainly benefited from your presence.
no, thank you. My point here is it's an absolute honor to have you, the CRN, as part of this channel here. And I know the audience will get a lot of value today. So if you don't
Sure.
mind, let's just jump right into it. My first question, I guess, is really comes from the newcomers of this space. What is the CRN? How does the CRN help supplement brands? We'd love to learn more about that.
Well, the Council for Responsible Nutrition has been around for many, many years. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary not long ago. I am not an industry veteran like yourself. I have been with the industry now for about 2 years in the capacity as the Vice President of Communications at CRN. But a little bit about the organization. I mean, it is a trade association. It represents many of the leading manufacturers of supplements and functional foods. And so many of the brands that consumers see when they walk down the supplement aisle at their local pharmacy or at a big box store are probably one of the brands that are part of our membership. And like all trade associations, the goal or the sort of mission is to advocate for and on behalf of the industry. So there are a lot of issues that face the supplement industry that banded together as a united force with regard to some of those issues, particularly on the regulatory front. There's a tremendous amount of a benefit in making sure that we have industry consensus among these many companies. So rather than one particular company trying to overcome an obstacle, say in terms of state or federal legislation, or maybe it has something to do. We see, for example, now a lot of international issues are emerging. A lot of talk around tariffs, as an example, is a hot button issue that maybe you'll ask me about later. Um, all of these things are better addressed, when you have a coalition of companies that are being sort of focusing their combined efforts through a trade association like CRN. So that's really what we're all about.
There's something to be said about fighting as an individual company versus like as a coalition, as you said, and to get that attention, get the eyeballs from the right people, and let people know what the industry is saying and feeling and thinking behind the scenes.
Exception too, Brian, if I can just add, is also, I think when one voice speaks, one company speaks, the agenda or the sort of, the sales strategy or all of those things are kind of called into question, if it's just one company. People say, well, that company wants to do X, Y, or Z because they want to sell, these products in this state, or they want to, expand their, product line overseas or whatever. But when you have a united group of companies that are all kind of talking, from the same playbook, you really, it really is a far more persuasive and convincing argument because it really is the voice of industry, and that's what CRN does and does very effectively, is to be that voice to say, hey, it's not just one company that wants this. It's a collection of companies that believe that this is the right way forward.
There's that advocacy aspect of the organization, being a member there, and also just you learn so much. There's a lot of resources that the CRN brings, a lot of experts. You see the future trends, in either regulation, but also future trends in products or ingredients and benefits and litigation and all these things that I think all owners would want to know and get a sense of what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, and I think what you're hitting on is, I mean, it is a network, right? I think that that is one tremendous benefit of being a member of a trade association is that it's not just that you're being represented by the experts here that actually work for the association, but you saw firsthand at our conference, as an example, there is a lot of information sharing that happens even among members. We have various committees. I happen to co-chair the marketing committee where we convene, people in the marketing function within these member companies to talk about what can we do as a collective in terms of improving the industry's reputation through marketing. So, and you get a lot of fantastic ideas that are being shared among these companies through the forum of a trade association, right? Something that really wouldn't happen. I mean, we're sort of like the Geneva, among these competitors, right? I mean, we are, a safe, non-competitive space to talk about what makes all boats rise with the tide.
Now let's switch gears a little bit. Now you hinted that you're coming outside of the supplement industry and now moving, obviously, as VP of Communications at CRN. Coming from that background, what have you learned about the supplement industry since joining CRN from your point of view?
Well, it's fascinating because I worked at FDA for many years, and so I had, the perspective, from the other side, really. And I was more focused on the pharmaceutical side when I was at FDA in public affairs. And then I did a brief stint in tobacco control, so I was at the Center for Tobacco Products. Um, uh, I in my tenure at FDA, I mean, I knew obviously that we regulated supplements, but I didn't know much about supplement regulation, nor did I know much about the industry itself. And I wasn't a big, consumer of supplements until I started working here and getting older. I mean, the combination of the two sort of make you a convert. And I will say that one of the things that I've learned is how much actual science is behind supplements. That it isn't just these legacy ingredients that kind of were around when DSHEA was passed. There was a lot of new dietary ingredients that have come onto the market, and also there's a lot of research being done on ingredients that have been around for a long time. I mean, take for example vitamin D. It seems like every other day there's a body of evidence that vitamin D is, efficacious for a variety of different things. And so, we have our website, vitamindandme.org, which is a microsite that we run that is kind of to me, it's sort of emblematic of exactly what I'm talking about. That there's tremendous value in a lot of these supplements, and I think that from a media relations perspective, which is sort of my area of expertise, we we are constantly swimming against a tide of skepticism around that, which is interesting because while the media and a lot of the sort of academic medical community often, I think is misinformed about the science behind supplements, consumers are really confident about the products that our industry creates. In fact, we do a consumer survey every year, and the scores for the confidence that people have in supplements and in their safety and efficacy have never been higher. So it's almost like there's a disconnect, right? On the one hand, America loves and believes in supplements, and on the other hand, you still have, I think, a percentage of the media and those that they seek interviews from that sometimes I think just don't have the full picture. And so part of my job is to make sure that we give them as much information as possible so that that coverage is balanced.
The amount of research, the amount of evidence, the science is growing every day. I'm learning new stuff every day. If you take something as simple as creatine, back in 2005, it was all about weightlifting, a loading dose,
Yeah.
and then a maintenance dose. Now it's like you don't need that loading dose. You've got some other benefits, that attention, the clarity, the cognitive function. There's so much new stuff out there, but I don't know what it is, but there's still that stigma. The media play, as you mentioned, there's something there, and maybe a lack of information. But
Well, I also think I think it's some of it is wording, right? I mean, language is powerful. I mean, it's interesting to me that a lot of people, and by people I mean, influencers, media, academics, they very much gravitate toward the word approval, right? I mean, when you talk about a pharmaceutical, you're talking about the FDA approving it, and they think of a stamp, an approval, and they don't understand, or it's hard for them to sort of appreciate that we are under an entirely different regulatory schema than drugs, but that is not a lesser, it's not less than, it is just different. And it's different for, many very important reasons. But I think people just get sort of kind of, confused about that. And it results in, what you and I know very well, people, it can create doubt, right? Where people are like, well, you hear this all the time, we're not regulated, or it's the wild, wild west, that it's just a free for all craziness, right? Just simply not true.
from your perspective, do you have any advice for supplement brands that are growing, starting up, or even established brands, especially with your PR background? Love to hear more communications background. Love to hear from your point of view.
Yeah, obviously, big surprise. I'm going to say join CRN, but 2 years ago, had you asked me that when I started this job, I don't know that I could give you a solid answer, as I am now, having lived it for 2 years. But man, the benefits cannot be undersold. It's everything we just talked about in terms of, networking. It has everything to do with being part of a coalition that really is fighting for the industry, and we are dealing with some very significant threats to the industry. You have the age gating of weight loss and muscle building products. We've seen the law in New York go into effect. We have several other states in play that want to pass similar age gating laws, where they're not going to sell these products to folks under 18 years of age. So a small company, to answer your question, you're joining forces with much larger companies, and together you're really working on a landscape in which, in the future, you will be able to innovate. You will be able to shape the destiny of the industry. I mean, really. I mean, quite literally. I mean, right now, our association, is, with regard to this age gating issue, is really, we're the only association right now, in New York, that still has litigation pending. So we are still in the fight in New York. And if you're a smaller company, you want to be at that table, because decisions are being made about what that looks like, about the path forward. All of those things come into play, and for you to have input into that, as particularly as a smaller company, you're just investing in your future, as an innovator, and your future, as a company that, wants to grow up and hang with the big guys, right? I mean that's every small company's right. Well, you don't have to wait. I mean, you can hang with the big guys now, by joining, a trade association that is as reputable as CRN is.
Well, that's the thing. Like, as big as the supplement space is, it's a very, very small industry. You get to see what the big players are doing. Like everyone's very friendly at these events. They want to share information. They want to help each other out. That's something that I took away from it over the years.
That's
And
right.
if you are a smaller startup or even a smaller established brand, but you can see the approach that these other larger brands are taking, some of their concerns. And I just love this year and how they distill this information in a more easier to understand way and how to roll it out and digest this and how it might impact each brand.
We have a senior leadership team here that is very versed in the regulatory landscape, is very versed in DSHEA, really understands the history of regulation at FDA. And, in our CEO, Steve Mister, you see, one of the foremost experts in the country, if not the world, in dietary, supplement regulation, certainly the U.S. version of that. And he has kept a relationship with FDA that has been, um, you know, engaged and I would say productive. Um, and you want to be engaged and productive with your regulator and looking for solutions to some of the industry's problems. And that's the kind of relationship that I see that this organization has with its regulator.
Speaking about the science and having the experts and these events where you bring in all these experts to talk about the research, to talk about some of the changing landscape of the supplement industry. What kind of events do you guys bring on? Maybe tell the viewers a little bit more about the events you typically hold and what they would expect to see and learn and engage and what do they get out of it?
Yeah, well, you were, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, a very fundamental and welcomed part of our Convergence 24 conference. So once a year we have a big conference for all of our members, and it's really, kind of our flagship gathering, meant to be, a forum for ideas exchanging. We bring in outside experts as well to talk about. We had Chris Saliza this year as an example, the political pundit who talked about, what the changeover in administrations could mean for the dietary supplement industry. It was very interesting discussion. He was talking about the elections and we typically hold this conference in the fall, and I think you probably walked away with the same feeling. I mean, you walk away from that conference feeling like you're um, part of the industry. I mean, it really feels like, you as a company or you as an employee within a supplement company, um, you see, I think, that aerial view of the industry, and you kind of understand, it's sort of like, you suddenly know where you are on the map. And I think that sense of place and location relative to an industry like the supplement industry is a very strategic place to be, right? To understand where what you have in common with your competitors, right? Um, because there's so much strength in that, and I think that and in all of our conferences, I think convey that, right? They're all about building strength as a united industry. So whether we have and we have many workshops, we have the legal workshop that we do every year in New York, which is very well attended. But we have lots of online workshops as well, and time and again we will bring in that agnostic voice to talk to the industry in a very non-competitive way about challenges, innovation. We had Innovation Exchange this year. It was sort of like a Shark Tank, if you will, where folks on the supply side of the industry were kind of pitching the brand side of the industry in terms of new innovations. So yeah, I mean, you really get a sense that these kinds of events, uh, you know, just strengthen everyone's everyone's portfolio, right?
Let's just say you've convinced me to join. Uh, how does one join the CRN, and what do fees typically look like, or how is that? What should we be considering if when we're interested in joining the CRN?
Joining is easy. It's as simple as contacting, and I can give you this email address that you can put in the write-up for this video. It might be easier. But Gretchen Powers is my colleague here who's in charge of membership. She's wonderful, and a simple email to her would get the ball rolling. I'm not extremely well versed in the fee structure. They don't let me play with numbers. I'm the communications guy. But I will say that it is based on a percentage of revenue. I mean, it's not a flat fee for everybody. It kind of differs based on the size of the company. And there's also associate memberships for folks who maybe are ancillary to the industry but are not producing. They're not actually a brand or a supplier of dietary supplements or functional food. Um, but I will say this. They're reasonable rates for sure. And when you think about what you're getting for that investment, um, there's just no price to it. I mean, for you to go out as an independent company and try to leverage, especially for smaller companies, and try to leverage to have a seat at that table and to leverage the combined influence of over 150 companies, right? Um, you just can't get that on your own. And so, you can hire consultants, you can go out in the street and kind of cobble together what you think is the same, level of influence and networking ability that a trade association can provide. But really, at the end of the day, um, it's just not the same, right? I mean, so it's just value. I mean, it's a tremendous value for what you get, and you're supporting. And back to what we were just saying. I mean, you're supporting a landscape, a future landscape that is going to allow you to innovate and to bring products to market and to be successful as a company. I mean, what a tremendous investment opportunity.
Where could people find more information? How can they learn more about the CRN or the content that you produce? Where can people find you?
crnusa.org. That's where it is,
Beautiful.
including the Supplement Source podcast, which I host. So
That's
hopefully I'll get
right.
some listeners too. Yeah.
You betcha. We'll have all the information in the description down below. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure to see you again, and thank you for taking the time.
Brian, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much.